So of all the features I get questions about the most in the Microsoft 365 E5 SKU is voice. Everybody seems to want to know, is it ready for prime time? Can I really rely on it? Can we really think about removing our Cisco or other legacy phone system? Is it really ready? Today in this presentation, we're going to discuss that. Is it ready to tear out our Cisco phone system? Are we ready to trust Microsoft Enterprise Voice with our PBX or departmental PBX or our pop-up requirements associated with voice? We're really lucky today to have Kevin Martins today as our presenter. In addition to his role currently as a partner technical technical architect, sorry, Kevin. Kevin has an extensive experience at Verizon and Hewlett-Packard and knows this subject matter really, really well. We're joined on the panel today by Justin Hassler. Justin is the subject matter expert here at Planet Technologies. Also by Brian Burns, who's the Federal Modern Workplace Specialist and has a deep, deep knowledge of voice. And then Walter Monasterio. Walter's the Vice President of Channel and Service Providers for Integrated Resources, and we're proud to have you with us as well. Kevin, excited to see your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I'll spend the next 20 minutes or so walking through a little bit of a history of Microsoft Unified Communications, as well as some of the product capabilities with Skype for Business. Then we'll get into what makes Skype for Business, both on-prem and in the cloud, enterprise ready and government ready, right? We'll talk about some of the overall value that you get with Skype for Business in the cloud and also on-prem. Then I'll go through some common deployment tips that we talk to customers about. And then I'll walk through some of the things you want to think about with a digital transformation when you go down this road for Skype for Business. Okay. A little bit of history about Microsoft and where we first started out in the unified communication space. We started off with Live Communication Server 2005, LCS 2005 as we used to call it. Then OCS Server 2007. 2 years later, we had another version of OCS 2007 R2 come out. Then we renamed the product back in 2010 to Link Server 2010. Another version of the product came out called Link 2013. And it was just within about a year or so after that that Microsoft acquired Skype. With the Skype technology coming in, some of the codecs that made Skype what it is and enabled it to do so well, we renamed the product Skype for Business. So now we have Skype for Business Server on premises, and we also have Skype for Business as part of Office 365. You can see here, I'll point out some of this later on, but we've got several versions of the product are also have received the JITX certification. So what is Skype for Business? Skype for Business, simply put, is a collaboration tool capable of doing so much more than just what people commonly think of as instant messaging. You can search anyone in the directory. If that person's online, you can tell what is that person's status. It's an automated type of status. If I'm there in front of my PC, I have an available there. If I'm on a call, it says, I'm in a call. If I'm in a conference call, it says, I'm in a conference call. If I have a meeting coming up that's been scheduled in Microsoft Exchange, it says, hey, Kevin's in a meeting, right? It's all an automated type of presence. So when you look at someone trying to find me, instead of just sending me an email, if it's something urgent, they know exactly where I am and exactly where to find me. Okay? It's very familiar. It's a very familiar interface. There were many of us here on the panel that grew up using MSN Instant Messenger, AOL Instant Messenger, Yahoo, and now Yammer, and there's several others that are out there. Not to mention Skype, the public version of it. The version of Skype for Business, the interface that you see is very much like Skype itself, right? Or those old interfaces. I can give this to just about anyone, and they can quickly figure out how to pull up someone's contact information, how to find someone and start an instant messaging conversation. Now, when you get into more of the advanced features of Skype for Business, that's where you get more into the rollout and adoption and training techniques that we use for user environments. How we use Skype for Business internally at Microsoft. We use this product like crazy. Chances are, if I'm not online, I'm either in an airplane or I'm in transit somewhere, right? We use this for our own internal meetings all of the time, right? I meet every week or so with my manager. We have a team meeting every week, right, where we all get on video. You know, we all share PowerPoint presentations. We share our desktops and so forth. Now, getting on video is a little bit strange at first, but eventually you get used to it. And eventually, it's no different than talking with the person who's sitting right next to you or across a meeting table. Okay? When we talk about enterprise voice, we provide a much higher fidelity call quality than what you would hear on a normal cell phone or a desk phone conversation today. Right? It's like going from standard definition television up to high definition television. You can hear a much greater sound variance in your voice when you're on these calls using the codecs that are included with Skype for Business. That goes with peer-to-peer calling. It also comes in with Pstn calling. So Pstn calling with Skype for Business, I can now call someone on the outside. I can call someone's cell phone. I can call someone's desk phone. I can bring up enterprise voice features such as PBX features, such as dial into a service number, press 1 for this, 2 for that, 3 for this. I can set up extension numbers. All the main features that are in most of the PBXs that have been on the market for years, I can now do in Skype for Business, on premises as well as in the cloud. Okay? When it comes to Skype for Business and the look and feel of it, and how it tags right into Office 365, it's as it's meant to be there. It's not a bolt-on application like you might get with some of the competitors' products out there. If someone sends me an email, if Brian sends me an email, for example, I could pull open that email, and if I didn't know Brian, if I didn't have him in my contact list for Skype for Business, I could click on his presence indicator. It's like a little jelly bean, a little dot, that if it's green, he's there. I know he's there. I can right-click on him right from there and start an instant messaging conversation with him. I don't need to reply back to that email. I just get my business done right there with him. Okay? Skype for Business, the features. When you look at this client itself, right, it's fully featured. All these features of collaboration, these rich features, are within one client. It's a single client. It's not like I have to go out to Adobe Connect to get this portion of a conference call that I need to set up. It's not like I need to go out to Jabber to do this or to Transverse to do that. It's all right there in a single client. In fact, again, getting back to how it's integrated in with Office 365 and Exchange and Outlook in this case, if I go into set up a new meeting in Outlook and I select my date and my time, select my attendees, right from there I just click on one button and I say, hey, this I want to be a Skype for Business meeting. Right there it fills in the hyperlink where I can join through a client, as well as it places the telephone number and the PIN right below that. That's all I've done. I click one button and it's all that call-in information is automatically generated. So from there I hit send and I'm done. Again, I don't need to go out to any other client to get the information and paste it all in. Right? That's a waste of time. There's a lot of time that could otherwise be spent better. Right? So when we look at Office 365 in the cloud, what's the advantage of moving to the cloud as opposed to a Skype for Business server on-prem? Well, for one, you're getting Microsoft to host it. There's no more need for a SIP trunk coming in. There's no more need for an SBC in most cases. There's no more need to worry about server outages and hardware load balancers and all the infrastructure that we had with Skype for Business on-prem, as well as other competitor products had. You don't need to worry about that. You can take your service numbers, you can take your DID numbers, and port them right up to Skype for Business as part of Office 365. Right? Let Microsoft worry about the infrastructure and those calls and calling features. When we look at the government cloud version of Office 365, we're into a lot of different environments, right? Our cloud, within our cloud, we've got over 3 million government users. Of that, there's 5,000 federal, state, and local agencies on the Microsoft cloud today, right? If there's a scenario or something specific about your environment that you don't feel that can be handled by the cloud, that's where you come to us. You come to Microsoft. You come to one of our partners like Planet Technologies, and we'll sit down and we'll talk about the scenario and what you need and what you're after, and we'll go from there. Chances are, with that many customers, that many users that are in the government cloud or in the public cloud, we can take care of that issue that's on the top of your mind. Okay? Our government cloud also, we're one of the few that are virtually and physically segmented, right? We don't just put anyone in control of the data center environment. We run through extra screening processes for these personnel. right? We're FedRAMP, we're FSMA compliance. We've got SLAs involved that'll make sure that these services are up and running at all times. This is just a short list of the many certifications that we have available that the government cloud has been certified for. When we look at HIPAA, when we look at CGIS, when we look at ITAR Ready, these are just a few. If you have something specific that you need the cloud qualified for to be able to put these services in, let us know. Again, chances are we've already done that for you. Let's talk a little bit about the value of Office 365. When I talk with people at first and they're saying, hey, I'm coming from this Avaya system or this Cisco system or this old Toshiba or Lucent 5e system, you know, they look at Skype for Business and they try to compare apples to apples. Like Skype for Business, you're going to provide dial tone, just dial tone, just like my current product has. Well, that's not the case, and that's not what we really look at, right? Because Skype for Business is so much more. It's that presence, it's that instant messaging, it's that video conferencing, it's the screen sharing, it's all of the above that Skype for Business can do. So we're not really comparing apples to apples just with Skype for Business. And then when you look at these subscriptions that are available, either on enterprise level, government levels, frontline worker levels, the subscriptions, we're providing, again, so much more. It's not just Skype for Business all of a sudden. Now you get into Exchange hosting services. You can move your Exchange services up to the cloud. You look at SharePoint services. You can move those up to the cloud. Then there's a lot of now add-on security products that are some of the best in the world that you'll have access to as part of being hosted in the cloud. So again, don't just look at Skype for Business as just a dial tone replacement product. It's capable of so much more. What do others say about it? Well, when we look at the Gartner Magic Quadrants, we're a leader in infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, in the private and public clouds. Right? This report is available from the 2015 time. Right? Then you look at where we've come, where we are today. We are number one in new voice seats sold. Right? We are preferred by many other customers we are preferred by more customers than any other IP PBX solution available today. Right? Over 79% of U.S. enterprises are deploying Skype for Business, and that includes telecom services. So a few deployment tips. Right? When we look at Skype for Business, oftentimes we'll go into customers who have had such a great experience with Skype for Business and using it for desktop control and internal meetings and so forth, that they'll say, hey, we're ready to move. We're ready to move our telecom services now over to Skype for Business. Can you help us? Hey, that's a great scenario. Everyone's already trained up. Everybody already knows how to use the client, even more so than when they first had it. Right? They also may be coming out of contract with one of the major service providers out there, and they're ready to move and port their local service numbers, their DID numbers, over to Office 365. Pstn conferencing is an interesting one. We've had customers come to us that are spending tens of thousands of dollars a month in Pstn conferencing services alone. And we look at that, and then we look at the overall cost that it would take to deploy Office 365 as a whole, and chances are they're saving money. They're saving a lot of money. The Pstn conferencing services are unreal compared to what else is out there. Then when we look at Pbx Interoperability, when you look at that, we can talk about JITC, right? JITC, we've achieved that certification several times. I was part of the team that took Skype for Business Server through JITC last year, right? We've now achieved that certification, right? We can interop with just about any other vendor that's out there. We've got the certification to prove that, right? When we look at teams, when we look at moving teams of people together, right, we'll come up with an entire plan to do that from a boss admin function, right? Move those people together. We'll also come up with a plan to move users first. Then we'll worry about infrastructure afterwards, right, such as fax services and so forth. Then we'll look at your phones. How many desk phones do you have? What's on the desk right now? What portion of those are being used? If you have a PBX today, chances are we can pull up reports and look at that and be able to say, hey, you're using 50% of your phones on the desks today. Well, maybe the other 50% we can use headsets for, right, at a lower cost, right? When we look at contact centers, especially in the Avaya space, right? Avaya has been very well known for their contact center capabilities. In Office 365, as well as on Prem, Skype for Business, we go to partners. We have many partners that have very rich capabilities of full contact center solutions, right? We'll bring them in. We'll have you talk with them, right? We'll also look at everything as a whole and develop a cost analysis. Nothing speaks more to the leadership teams other than cost, right? Hey, here's what we've got today. Here's what we can get to tomorrow, and here's the cost savings. Cost savings as well as all the enhancements and features and collaboration tools that we've got available to us, right? We'll talk more about that. Then I'll get into the book of dreams, right? Think about, again, where you are today and where you want to go tomorrow, right? Where you are today, you're on that old Lucent system, that old Toshiba system, that old Avaya system, whatever it may be, providing you just dial tone. You have no instant messaging product, or maybe you do. You've got Jabber being used for one thing, WebEx being used for another thing. This disparate set of systems that here you can bring it all together. You can bring Skype for Business and everything else with Office 365 together and enable a new collaboration type of environment, right? That's your book of dreams. Figure out where you are, where you need to get to, and then contact Microsoft, a Microsoft partner to come in and help you out. Let us help you develop the steps to get from where you are today, again, to tomorrow. Let us help you develop that book of dreams, right? Something that Microsoft launched about 1.5 years ago was the Skype Operations Framework. This is very important for our partners, our Microsoft partners out there. Pstn Technologies is one of the few that is certified in the Skype Operations Framework. It's a methodology to successfully deploy Skype for Business on-prem as well as in the cloud. As a partner, they'll help you plan. They'll help you plan everything. What do your dial plans look like today? What are your desk phones? What does the usage look like today? They'll plan everything out. They'll work with you to make sure that you're planning the foundation for a successful migration to the cloud. Then they'll help you deliver it, right? When it comes to delivery, how is this going to roll out? Boss admin functionality together, those teams together, rolling out those headsets, teaching people on where to plug in the headsets. It might be a USB to you and I, but to them, maybe someone's never seen that type of connection. They'll help out with the smallest to the most complex things. Then finally, they'll help you operate the system, right? The operate phase is not the final phase. It's not crossing the finish line, right? It's more of, it's a spot to get to, but to continue moving forward with, right? There's always network changes, right? There's always a new network switch or router or something like that coming in, a new network admin coming in who may not properly set these things up to tag the voice traffic so it has priority on the network, right? Pstn Technologies as a Microsoft partner will help you do that. Then when we talk about the digital transformation, right? Microsoft has plenty of references. Remember the slide that I showed earlier where we've got over 3 million different users, 3 million users in the government cloud alone, right? We've got plenty of references on the Microsoft website. We can put you in touch with many of your peers. If you're a sheriff's department in some counties, in some state, somewhere in the US, or elsewhere in the world, let us know. We'll get you in touch with one of your peers, and they'll tell you about their digital transformation and what a move to Office 365 and Skype for Business in the cloud has done for them. So from there, I'll turn it back over. Thank you very much.
Kevin, what a great presentation.
Thank you.
I love it when I learn stuff. I figure it's really exciting stuff. So I think the first question I need to ask you is, there's been so much out there on LinkedIn and in the media about Teams and Skype. So I know you probably are tired of already addressing it, but can you help us kind of understand where it is, what the time frame is, those types of things?
So when it comes to Skype for Business and Microsoft Teams, what was announced last week is that Skype for Business and the features that have made Skype for Business so rich, right, and so enjoyed by so many millions of customers out there, that we're going to take the services that are in there, such as Pbx Calling, Pstn Conferencing, Pstn Calling, and so forth, and we're going to bring those into Teams. So eventually in Microsoft Teams as a client, you're going to start to see those features lit up in there, right? So eventually, we're not getting rid of Skype for Business as a service at all. It's more of, we want the the Microsoft Teams client to become the intelligent collaboration client that you're going to go to, that all of our customers are going to go to. And eventually in time, you will see that happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And as an avid Teams user myself, I mean, the interface is so great already, and it inherits so much of the other platforms that it's already the front door for that. I'm so excited about Skype being included as well. Brian, in your role, as a modern workplace principal modern workplace specialist, what are you seeing in terms of challenges customers are facing from an adoption and implementation perspective?
That's a great question. I think there's actually two kind of brackets per se. There's both a technical challenge as well as a social challenge. Technical challenges being in the from the telecom team's perspective that they're looking at this as a PBX. And to Kevin's point earlier, it's not a PBX. It's a collaboration platform, right? Video, IM, presence, all of those pieces together. The other part of the technical challenge are, one, how do you make sure that the telecom team, the network team, the security team are all working together? Because in the past, from a PBX perspective, I'm leveraging the network. I provision my network so that all of my high priority packets on the voice side are prioritized through the network. When you look at Skype for Business, it's a different type of assessment. So typically customers don't go through that same type of scenario when they add Skype for Business on top of their network infrastructure. The one that I don't think is probably covered enough though is really that social change. In our space, in a public sector environment, we're often faced with a challenge that users just are not comfortable of moving from their desktop phone to a soft desktop client, where from my perspective as your typical user, I have my desktop phone. I kind of refer to it as the cigarette effect for anybody that smokes out there. It is my cigarette, right? I pick it up and I like picking it up and I like that feeling in my ear, and it's a habit. I pick that handset up. When I move to this new environment, I'm trying to give that habit up. So when I'm communicating from that desktop client, I'm using a headset, I'm looking at presence, I'm sharing content. I really need to start looking at it both from a leadership perspective as well as a user perspective, is that I'm really trying to change the way my agency and my organization communicate. So those are really, I think, the two, technical challenge and social challenge, are the pieces that we see some of those issues around adoption and getting to the online service.
And I want to come back to that social challenge as well, because we sort of addressed some of those things in our last session. But Walter, in your role with integrated resources on the technical side and the network evaluation, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, at Integrated Research.
I'm sorry, Walter.
No, it's okay. At Integrated Research, we really focused on a little bit of both of that social and technical challenge with our product, UC Assessor. They say you only get one chance at a first impression. And if we look at it from the social perspective, users that are coming in that are not used to this platform, if they're not having a great experience with these rich features and an optimized network, they're likely to very much slow their adoption and consumption, right? Nothing can derail a project quicker than a poor user experience at first. And then from a technical perspective, if you're entering this brave new world of deploying a different kind of infrastructure, you really want some deep analysis of what some of the potential gotchas could be and how do you solve them before you roll those out.
So tell us a little bit about how your organization does that. I'm going to get it right too. It's integrated research too, and I'm going to get it right.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit of how your organization drives that.
So our solution, first of all, we come to market in a way that's easier for customers, whether they want to deploy our assessor product on-prem or have it delivered through a cloud. We have the ability to test all the modalities that Skype for Business delivers, right? So whether it's voice, video, app sharing, meaning like desktop sharing, all those things, all the codecs are natively built into the solution, and you can test any one or multiple of those modalities to really be able to mimic what it will look like in a user's environment. So given that we have those capabilities, we can test a number of different scenarios to really ensure that the end user experience and the application on the back end will behave, for lack of a better term, as people expect. We're an all software-based approach, right? So there's no hardware to deploy, no probes. Makes the conversations with the security departments a little bit easier. It's a quick install. Usually we can be up and running and collecting data within hours instead of a matter of weeks. We work very closely with the Microsoft engineering teams to ensure that what we're measuring from an SLA perspective matches to what Microsoft wants to for their support perspective. So when we look at doing a network assessment, it's obviously to assess the technical requirements, but also to ensure that the scenarios that we're testing are realistic of how a company would use it in order for them to gain the maximum benefit.
And how does that manifest itself in sort of remediation, right? So the report provides some sort of remediation opportunity?
Yep, absolutely. So, we have a pretty prescriptive framework of, come in, assess the network, understand what the issues are. Within our tool, we also have some native troubleshooting capabilities that will help with the remediation. There's a heuristics engine built in that will tell you if you're seeing a common error on this interface, it's most likely configured for half duplex, right? So it gives you somewhere to go start and kind of hunt and understand where those issues are. And then once you fix the problem, run the assessment again to ensure that you have corrected the problem and you're not building a bigger ball of yarn downstream.
That's great. So now we know we've got this platform that we can efficiently run these solutions on top of, right? So we've sort of addressed the challenge of can I really count on it to deliver these types of services? We've addressed that already. So Justin, coming then to you, and at Planet, in your old Planet Technologies as our subject matter expert, what is the value? What are the wins you're seeing these customers, get by adopting the Skype for Business and the enterprise voice platform?
So one of the first things, one of the biggest wins you can get is when the customer stops utilizing third-party conferencing services that charge by the minute and charge a lot of money, and move to the Skype for Business platform.
So one of the things that I think is really interesting, and Justin was telling me about it, there's one of the relief organizations right now that we're working with everything that's going on right now in the country from a disaster perspective. They're already in the throes of a evaluation to go to Skype for Business for voice, but now they've got these relief opportunities and requirements right now. So you were mentioning a little bit of this organization looking to launch in a almost like a pop-up variety, right, to support this.
Yeah, so a pop-up hotline for their customers to call for any situations that might come up, utilizing the Cloud PBX and its call queue features so you can essentially put 50 users into a room, give them all laptops and headsets, and now they're a call center that can handle any emergency situation that comes
And
up.
Kevin, this can be stood up pretty quickly, especially if they're already an Office 365 customer.
Right, especially if they're already a Skype for Business cloud voice user, it can be set up within minutes. We've got demo clients out there that you can get online and you can test this out, this functionality out for themselves. And also, I think the flexibility is there too, where it's 50 users in a room, but it could be 50 users spread throughout the country because they could be anywhere. That's the beauty of it, right? So talk about not having to bring 50 people in together from across the country. Just let them do it from home. The calls will still route.
So
the phone will still ring.
I'm super curious then, if we kind of marry some of this stuff together in a
conversation,
right? So in this scenario, we still want to deliver a certain quality of service, right? So Walter, I'm curious, how quickly could your tool, in this scenario, how quickly could we run this tool to make sure that these 50, 100, 500 people in a relief organization scenario could quickly get the quality of service they needed, and then we could quickly roll into this?
We can stand up our solution usually in a minute if it's a cloud or an on-prem within hours, start collecting the data. Usually the recommended time span to run an evaluation would be a week or maybe 2 weeks. But if you wanted to take that in shorter increments to immediately start understanding what some of the issues are, we can do that and then do some trending analysis about what you find over some of the different increments. It's really incredible what you find in terms of some issues when you run these assessments over a short term. We found that one customer had a Microsoft data center in their home physical city, but found out that their service provider was routing their traffic in a way that it was doing 3 hops around another city to the other side of the country and then back. So we were able to remediate that pretty quickly. Another customer had some very intricate firewall policies, and a call had to traverse 15 firewalls to make it out to the public internet. So we were able to quickly remediate that down to 3 firewalls, and then they were able to move on pretty quickly from that point. Last example I'll give you, one customer gave all their branch offices kind of a certain amount of leeway in terms of what architecture they deployed. So to save a little money, they were deploying, kind of home quality wireless access points. We were able to do an assessment and within a few days understand that the wireless access points were the choke point. Then our partner comes in, does the remediation, following that breadcrumb trail, finds, hey, this is not the type of gear that you want to be running enterprise video and voice over. So once we're installed quickly, we can also drive meaningful data that partners can go out and act on and ensure that the customers are getting the experience they need.
Yeah, and I think that's, that's really important, because one of the things I love about Office 365, cloud services in general, but specifically Office 365 is, you know, we can be pretty quick to market, especially when we need to be, right?
Right.
And we can, you know, once we have this foundational plumbing pieces in place, right, and we have a basic understanding from the end users in terms of how they use these technologies, we can be up and running pretty quickly as we start adding on and layering on these technologies, right? I mean, I think this is one of the kind of hidden gems here, is that we talk about it when we talk to our customers, but I'm not sure they're quite, you know, capturing that. If I've got directory, if I got identity, if I have those things, if I've got security sort of placed up in place, I can layer things pretty easily. You know, Brian, are you seeing some pushback from customers? Are we seeing some wins where, like, hey, we had the plumbing in place, we layered on this kind of stuff and it went quickly? Are you seeing wins like that?
Yeah, small wins right now. You know, it's kind of, and I always use the notion of crawl, walk, run. You know, we're in that middle phase between crawl and walk. Customers are really starting to grasp onto the whole Pstn conferencing, audio conferencing access with Office 365 and Skype for Business Online. So, you know, they are beginning to see the power of what we call the ecosystem. Because Skype for Business is really part of the ecosystem. It's a small piece of the larger whole. So when you start thinking of a customer is already in Exchange, customers are now starting to use our online archiving capabilities. They're now looking at, you know, our content management, e-records. And when you think about Skype for Business, it's one of those communication modalities that fits into that service. So that's where we're really starting to see that kind of uptick of, okay, I'm going to start using Pstn conferencing. Okay, now I'm going to start taking a look at your cloud PBX, and maybe I'm going to integrate that on Prem, or I'm just going to jump right to cloud PBX and Pstn Calling services. We're seeing some specific agencies that are moving earlier than others. When you think about things like Inspector General offices and things like that, more that they're more mobile, right? They're taking advantage of that mobile access.
So, Justin, we talked a little bit in Brian's initial comments, we talked a little bit about the social aspect of the clients, getting people comfortable with that. You know, what are some of the experience you're seeing, and have you seen any things that are more successful than others in terms of that kind of adoption? I mean, besides our Evolve 365 platform, which we talked about in the last segment, which, you know, besides that, that's outstanding.
Originally, there were multiple clients. If you launched a web conference, you needed to use live meeting or net meeting. Now that it is all one client and everything can be launched from that one client, I think it's become a lot easier for the end users to become familiar with all the different functionalities of the client because it's all in one place. And the addition of the Outlook meeting add-in, the ability to schedule a meeting simply and launch it right from a URL in an email it really simplifies things for the end user.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. To me, I mean, I think Brian was talking a little bit more in some ways about like the headset and the cigarette effect. I like that.
Yeah.
But, you know, and it is slightly uncomfortable at first if you go to a headset, if you're in an organizational, where you know, if you're in a cube farm or something like that. But I tell you what, it's funny for me because I can't actually even use a headset anymore. Like I just talk directly to my Surface now. I'm sure Surface now, you're probably in the same boat, right?
Right.
You
right.
know?
Yeah, and it's also, it's like what I was saying before too, it's about, okay, so Skype for Business offers some great video conferencing capabilities, you know, whether it's one-on-one, but you're in Dallas and I'm in Washington, D.C., right? It's like we're right there. Uncomfortable at first, but then it just works, it just clicks. Now it's like I'm right there in the same room with you, we're out having lunch together for that matter, right? You just get comfortable with it. It's a change, it's an environmental change, and something that everyone has to get comfortable with. And eventually they just do.
And I think even eventually, really, right? I mean, because for most people, especially as our generations kind of move into technology, I mean, to your point, Justin, I mean, when we have that meeting integration now, it's a hyperlink, right? It just looks like a hyperlink. I hit enter Skype meeting and I enter in through a hyperlink, basically, right? And even the Skype client itself is tab driven, and you know, it doesn't take much to figure out in these days how to right click on something to get a drop down, you know, any of that, those pieces. So I think while I imagine that there is some barrier to adoption around the headsets and those types of things, I think the market is kind of showing that people are a lot less tied to that than maybe they used to be, right? You don't see as many phone manufacturers for Skype really pushing their wares in the way that you did even 3 or 4 years ago. I'm assuming you guys agree with that, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. You know, it's interesting. We're seeing a lot of agencies now reach out and, you know, take the step towards, hey, yes, we understand we need to take the phones off the desk, but we're not there yet. We are headed there because if you look at any platform out there, the most expensive piece of any IP platform, IPPBX, PBX, are the desktop phones. When you're talking about tens of thousands of those, that can be extremely cost impactive to an organization. If you can look at it, you know, I think Kevin might have brought this up, or somebody brought this up about a percentage. If I can target a percentage of that, that's where you want to head to. And it takes really, you know, the leadership to try to drive that impact, and then this type of team plan it to help the user really adopt that, right? Adopt that change. It takes training. It takes, you know, instructor-led documentation, things like that. So
Yeah,
it really takes an effort.
I agree with
Sometimes, just to further onto that, sometimes it's you need to offer an incentive, perhaps, to people, you know, to use the headset. So, hey, instead of just a headset that just does calls, hey, I'll go a level up and offer that to my user environment, which in some companies, it's 80% millennials, right? If I give them a headset where they can listen to some good quality music coming off of that, there's an incentive to go to that instead of a desk phone. So sometimes we can work things out like that. You know, Jabra, Plantronics, Sennheiser, they all make great noise canceling headsets as an option that play great music too.
I love it. So Walter and Brian, I'd love you guys to give us, like, if you could give, you know, our customers, you know, one piece of advice that you've learned through, you know, these implementations or whatever, each of you, I'd love you guys to kind of give that before we break off.
Sure. A network is a living, breathing thing almost, right? So running an assessment at the beginning of a deployment is absolutely a good idea. But as you go through the life cycle of that deployment and you're preaching the adoption and consumption, more people will start using voice, more people will start using video. So the network profile will change. So ongoing or periodic assessments of the network will help you continue to fine-tune that to make sure that you're getting, you know, the best experience that you can from the application. We're not just testing out to the Azure Edge, we're testing to the media relays and the Skype for Business servers in any data center. And if you're operating in a hybrid environment, we have the ability to triangulate between any of those environments as well. So really it's about not just deploy it and walk away, it's understand how your users are using it. Happy users will help you drive the adoption and consumption, and really you know, the most impact you can get from the platform.
And I think a critical component on top of that, and there's really been a recurring theme throughout the day, is now that we're in the cloud potentially here, hopefully in the cloud here, you know, Microsoft's going to be layering on new features and functionality every year, every 6 months, every 3 months. You know, so you need to continue to evaluate to make sure that you can launch these new features and functionality and a quality of service, right?
Yep.
Brian, what have you learned, or what would you like to share?
I think there's two things. Really, it's understanding you know, what the core business objectives are, meaning that you know, you don't really want to go from telephony to telephony. You really want to look at the organization and understand what your goals are and really how the change in your communications infrastructure can help you get there. I don't want to take, you know, one phone system and really exchange it for another phone system. The last point I would leave them with is kick the tires, right? Did you move to Office 365 and Exchange Online before you started kicking the tires? Probably not. I would say take the same step with Skype for Business online as well. So, you know, I think the timing we talked about earlier, we can stand up a pilot of Office 365 and Skype for Business online within a couple of days and actually have telephone numbers for your customers in that environment so they can start kicking the tires. Once they kick the tires, you know, with certain business groups, right, with certain users that are really comfortable with that change, then that adoption, you'll see how fast it will start.
If I can add one last thing, you know, in terms of, you know, ongoing assessment, you also want to look at the health of the applications and how these things change. You know, we had one company where QoS wasn't a required policy for Wi-Fi or the LAN, right? And then we were able to quickly identify that that's where the choke point was with our day 2 operations solution called IR Prognosis. So it's really about moving through a life cycle of upfront assessment, periodic assessments, but then also measuring what the voice quality is, what the user experience is, and what the overall kind of engagement score would be for the organization.
That's great. And so, and I think the thing I want to add is, as we've been talking about all day, this goes into your governance strategy, it goes into your security strategy, it goes into your end user adoption strategy and training. It's another feature in this Office 365 continuum we want you to adopt and evaluate. So I think we all agree that the answer is, when I asked, is it prime time? Is it ready for prime time? And the answer is, do some evaluation, do some planning, do some kicking the tires, and we'll prove to you the answer is yes.
Exactly right.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.